Guten Morgen. Das Redbook. Nambani Rinpoche can dema Lo Song Song, the Zhi Lam Drä, Short Sumba, the Dutch tone, the Dutch, the English tone. Parakundo Zambola, Sansa Los in the Wa. The Dep, Mombon, the Short Sumba. Page number 3. Allah.
If you have the blue prayer,
if you
have the blue book by Longchen Rabjam, then doing that prayer on page 3.
English is 3, page 3. German text is page number 12. 12.
Logra.
So
we're going to read this. So we're going to read this in English, starting on page 3. Homage to glorious Samantabhadram. The true nature of things is naturally free of conceptual projections. It does not exist, since even the victorious ones do not see it. Yet neither is it non-existent, as it is the ground of all Samsara and Nirvana. There is no contradiction here, for it lies beyond the realm of expression. May all realize this great perfection, the true nature of the ground. In essence, it is empty, hence free from the limitations of permanence. By nature, it is clear and free from the limitations of nihilism. Its capacity unobstructed, it is the ground of manifold emanations. It is divided into 3, yet in truth, there are no such differentiations. May all realize this great perfection, the true nature of the ground. Inconceivable and free of all superimposition, one-sided fixation on things being either existent or non-existent, completely dissolves. The full import of this turns back even the tongue of the victors. Without beginning, middle, or end, it is a great expanse of deep clarity. May all realize this great perfection, the true nature of the ground. Its essence is pristine, unoriginated, and primordially pure. Whatever manifests is the expression of this unconditioned, spontaneous presence. Without perceiving them as other, realizing the great unity of awareness emptiness, one's understanding of the ground will reach a point of culmination. May there be no deviations and mistakes concerning this key point of the path. Pure from the beginning, even the term view does not exist. Aware of the original state, the sheath of meditation falls away. There are no reference points, hence no need to restrain one's conduct. In the spontaneously present nature, this state of naked simplicity, may there be no deviations and mistakes concerning this key point of the path. Not falling into partiality towards positive thoughts or negative ones, and without giving free rein to a state of indifferent neutrality, manifestation and liberation, and expanse unrestricted, unbridled, and spontaneously free. Understanding that the nature is inherently devoid of needing to accept and reject, may there be no deviations and mistakes concerning this key point of the path. Like space, awareness is the universal ground and starting point. Manifest ground spontaneously present, yet vanishing like clouds in the sky. The mind radiates out, projecting outwards, and then returning within to the youthful vase body's inner space, possessing 6 unique characteristics. May all seize the throne of this majestic fruition. From the very beginning, awareness itself is Samantabhadram. Within it, all hoping for attainment dissolves into the sphere of reality, the true character of the great perfection beyond intentional effort. The sphere of reality and awareness, the inner space of Samantabhadri, may all seize the throne of this majestic fruition. Utterly non-abiding, the nature of the Great Middle Way, all-embracing and spontaneously vast, the state of Mahamudra, freed from limitations and wide open, the key point of the Great Perfection, the virtues of the levels and paths fundamentally complete, spontaneously present in inner space, may all seize the throne of this majestic fruition.
답바도 찾아가지고 그 소리 조정 저도는 조절바 줄라서 들어오는 라바다라도 그 생각담바 용지 긴들라요 정사로 도지에들은 오다마 밤에라 제가 아무도 봐자와노 봐 가지고 라마나마고 내 오미지 japон에도 사실 그 영어 아주 조금 것도 제바사발라 메저로서 와데 마오 가다지요 넘어도 보고 저도지 시도도 그렇고 이제 라마조 트름도지 잡아서 와데 그래서 아마제 조어도 좀 종상신 소진 종 상하 상면에 다소 원님의 저저 말에 조어서 동안 전다 추진치 야소매 보죠 지라서 생계도 다녀도 나지나 담바 주전은 더다도 근데 그뭐 세 거바리 대 중앙는 상황을 봐시죠 거바리 이제도 다 근데 가서가 잡고 해 스납지 모래
Here is a picture of Khenpo Munsen, and this picture was actually taken when he was in prison, actually secretly. And nowadays, this picture you can find it all over the world, and it really has a lot of blessings.
다사 내 마유콩나 가다 지지께서 무고 송근나니 초니 이위저 노블라 송이 이위저 노블이 강이전 이위저 노블이 가래서 탐지기 다 노블이는 세수에 남들라래 세디 취지지 강제내야 되는 도단 지자 라서 봤더니 이제 대시지로 말이래 수남라고 요래 수남 just dor체고들 수남대 아카카라고 상고 요래 대 말에 이위저 노버데 더 술라도 대하고 거래 이위 노버데 샘데 용이 이위 노버데 요래 대로 대식 정보서 이위 노버데는 대식 정보 다 요래 드니데 서dor체데 산지 좀디데게 사제 때바 싶어도 샘상만 조요래들이 이마 요 말이죠. 랑그 샘의 용도 너는 사제 때만 인지. 오다 샘 너는 가려지. 다 노블스 돌체 거래서 돌이 파나서 돌체 거래서. 근데 돌체 탑라들이다. 소장 말씀 랑제를 봐 탐지. 대 세스 돌체 탑리 이 직장 말이지. 샘도 돌체 탑 장마조 탑리지. 상파소야서 나지리 뭐고 샘광 오랑아오 냐바진 도 다들 자라메 바더니 세나서야메 바 동동야메 바 되니 매주 세잖아 대세야 요 말이 오 태소는 세 송상거리 양조요래 제도 샘광 나디지면은 되니 샘광을 아시세나 나오냐 받으면은 쇠자 쇠지 님의 생방의 시도하면도 사람들 지금 나오냐 봐 대파상마서 마타 파드 동네요에서 뒤체의 상대나 니디지 나오냐 봐도 내가 저요에 내 상서들 신남 걸 제시해 봐게 돼 이거요에 대선 이기 넣어서 가리 책설들은 이기 넣어도 샘들고는 요래 다다소소 가리 랑그 샘들이 샘나니까 나오냐가 되지. 대 장마지나더니 도지 팔람나 장마지나더니 배공치보 배제도 샘배도 도지 팔람을 이 위지 나와서 랑 샘고 그래서
So before we are getting into the actual teachings here, I'm just looking back at the teachings yesterday. In the last verse by Chikden Sumgön, there was reference made to the two accumulations which are similar to a wish-fulfilling jewel. And we have said that a wish-fulfilling jewel has to do with merit. And so now we, on an outer level, ordinarily, we call worldly happiness and fortune, we call that a merit, actually worldly or dharma. When things go well, when we have a good reputation, for example, the business goes well, and so on, all of the goodness, we call it a merit. And so we think that merit is something that is something else, which is not us, something that we acquire from elsewhere. But actually, that's not the right way to understand merit. This wish-fulfilling jewel here, what is that? Actually, when you have a mind, anyone who has a mind has it already, actually. And we call it Buddha nature. It just needs to be polished, like a diamond. The Buddha himself had said, completely tame your own mind. This is the Buddha's teachings. So there is no other teachings of the Buddha than that, than being a method to purify your own mind. And that is like polishing this diamond or this jewel. So the various levels of the path of individual liberation, of bodhisattvas and vajrayana, all are only methods to polish this jewel, to purify the mind and nothing else at all. So what needs to be cleansed is self-grasping. It is this concept of there being an I that exists. And that's always there. We never really separate from it. We can't kill it, we cannot suppress it, and so on. For example, you can kill a person, but you cannot destroy this concept of I. It still remains. Even if you think I have died, then it still goes on, actually. This concept of I still goes on. So then when this mind becomes free of this concept of an I, that is when you realize there is no duality between something to be destroyed and the destroyer. And then you realize that my mind actually cannot die. And until this concept of an I has disappeared, until then there is no end to suffering. For as long as there is an I, there is a dualistic fixation, and that needs to be cleared away. And when it is cleared away, the mind is experienced like space, beyond birth and death. So this wish-fulfilling jewel should be understood to be our own mind. And it's there right now. You have that mind. So right now, it appears in the form of this concept that things I am, that's me. And that needs to be purified. Just like you're polishing a diamond, and once the diamond is polished, then it becomes actually very, very expensive. So just like that, we need to polish our mind. So this wish-fulfilling jewel, we must understand that it is nothing else but our own mind.
제가 초석바시바들에 일단 사진한 게 초가리 사요리 사진한 게 있잖아 당부 더받침부 직진 강나 페퍼 값에 들이 공거 잠시 치워 방호 유명들이 되라 대개 더받침은 자니 당나 창조에서 연구 당부 산숙 당부 산숙의 당부 톡지바의 값이 제일 정대 드니 레 마다버지와 납자다 이제 가면 예리 까미 드니 사주고 세를 못지 삼대다 마다가 선택에 다들 저 빼나 잡고 지와이나 빼나 집발라 차야나 당보 홀로죠 로주 제다 로지 되는 거 보상 총마 되는 거 되는 집아들은 거 르당 집아 담모를 비지 라고 르당 집아 담은 뒤에다 집아 바로도 선바지 집아가 탈선바지 뒤에다 우리 바로도 선바 쪽 맹자사다 바로도 선이지 되는 이처럼 되는 이 로바 바로도 선바 쪽고니 깔리져 가지고 심지가 돌아가게 습지가 돌아 다부지왕 납자 바다부지왕 납자 때 용잠지나 지 장세 세바데 장못 해봤더니 소는 거 소장을 봐 싸울 때도 별 집어볼 때 가베 잡을 때 집이 바로도 선바지 맹때도 사지 가베 가리죠 습지 섭지도 혼화서 무슨 직장 삼요 말 대회더니 사지 가베 자록 되래.
And now speaking about accumulating merit, how did the Buddha himself actually accumulate merit? Actually, before he was born as the Buddha, before he appeared as the Buddha Shakyamuni in this world in a previous life, he was born as a poor son of Brahmin, and then he encountered the Buddha of that time, and he made an aspiration, I want to become just like you, folding his hands. That was actually the first aspiration towards enlightenment that he had made. And so then he also took birth 500 times in an impure incarnation and 500 times in a pure incarnation. And throughout this time, he never separated from this intention of bodhicitta, of love and compassion. For example, he was born as a king, and so on. For example, how has he accumulated merit in terms of practicing generosity? First, he had a lot of resources, like a wheel-turning king, many possessions, and child, and so on. And all of that, including his body, he let go. Once he made an offering of his body to a tigress, for example. So in this way, he perfected finally the paramita, the perfection of generosity, and likewise the other 6 perfections, like patience or ethical discipline and so on. And so by practicing the 6 paramitas, the Buddha made the greatest effort in the accumulation of merit. And the reason why he did that, why he endured all these hardships, is for the benefit of sentient beings. So actually now saying that he took birth in 500 pure and 500 impure incarnations, that is actually just a very small number of the births that he did take where he accumulated merit. Actually, the births that he took to accumulate merit are incalculable. He accumulated a vast amount of merit. And this is just one example on how he accumulated merit when he practiced generosity. So all the hardships and the effort that he made was for the benefit of sentient beings. And this entire time there was not one thought, not one concern about himself. So this is an example of how the Buddha himself had accumulated merit.
이 대회 대대로 소나 소사네 이제 말을 배웠던 숨바에 잘을 공부공지는 소화조 용다 이 공공 잡지냐미지 호화지는 때문에 좀 호화이 호화를 되는 사지가 수능한테 쉽지게 주려 민민토고요 쉽지게 톱톱고요 쉽지 탐지에서는 쉽지 가장 제담을 쉽지는 남과는 타면 쉽지는 타요 말이지 대기는 나를 깔아야지 남과는 타면 쉽지 맞아봐도 나무는 잡이지 남군 타톱 받쳤다면 쉽지만은 타양 대다 못 대기는 쉽지 맞아봐도 나무는 돼서 이렇게 들이다가 뭐서 망보이면 쉽지 되게 다 체득 볼레시네 고마요말 이렇게 사제게 쉽지 탐지 초사부터라 통원 통절 용의 용절 들이 딱보에 딱절지 그렇게 절 들이 대라서 받은 사제가 좋았다 보는 점 sommer 되다가 통절되다 탐지 사제에서 초사마다 탐지 들이 대나와리 수렁사부 탑 변은 상지가 고라 된다고 요나 상지는 송체 대탐지를 상지는 제와 착세 탐지를 들이 수능 타고요 가봐서 선생님도 받다 그요 득바시 받을 거네 상지 그 득바시 받 당지 도망에 받을 오디 닥치를 상바는 진짜 상지가 나서 다 상지들이 득바 연구요를 빼지다 특바사는 장소시 대다더니 우리 다다디나 무슨 초사고 갑시다 요 말이 제르진이니 도로디는 초사부터 통을 제르진이 초사부터 조건은 창리들 나는 따로고 평소나 따로데 조라우나 들어지고 조라우나 미성스는 이게 미진 토리슨 근데 로르도 하이를 계속고요 들이 저기 가지고 줄을 하이를 들이 잠깐만 쓰고요 라이라디아 내가 토리슨 그 내성수고 고제 토리슨을 해서 제대로 돕리가 치고요 그는 용의 용들들 주민이라서 와다비 랑이가 소사도 왔다 이런 상황들이 지사지는 제발이 이렇게 소디사나 심지는 제담 피나 들었담들이랑 게 똑같아 그요 그래서 다 가리리 오 이리 다니 이메비 이는 피나 늘 미비스는데 저것도 뭐 하고 말이 가까스 안 그러지 다니 니요 말이 다 지금 너도 저들이 다도 저들이 나선 지역마다 랑 라발 컨트롤한 거리 깜빡 컨트롤한 거리 딱 그린 거죠 그 배때는 이 마르크 생기 데이터가 차대지 대회는 초사부 탑다다 다 자치 보송한테 다 생기 탑인데 다 탑제다 다 탑제다 저 동대 뒤에서더다 뭐는 무슨더다 대다 버지네 뒤에서 생기 탑제 줄 수능대 탑 이 ram지를 때는 대에서 샘들 자로로도 마셔는 세구대로 대에서 싸로 동다봐 너는 삼바는 얘기 무엇인지 봐 삼바는 이제 조리지 무엇이 봤는지 차트고요 이때 뭐는 됐어 세나 늘 생처럼도 쉬어나 상기에 타독 상기 처럼 삼아서 저도 쭉 와봐 일단 저같이 못지는 사진이 되었던지 처럼도 쉬어니 용도디 장소에 쭉 와서 될 상기에 그래서 있다고 차요래 이 뭐는 됐어 그렇지바지 동대 될때 초사들이 같이 가서 깨지경 매사고 난 참는 되고 컴바 매 수매 배샤 매상고요 오랑이 대다고 사제거든요 소사부 탈들이 다들 좋아 족좀 놓고 저절 대다라서 봐 정말에 소통 건조도 봐 통절 수절 용절 수절 저절 대라서 봐 정말에 대탐지를 도망치 못 지내들랑 그 용띠에서 하고는 삼피에서 보자고요 대다고 자고래 이 소소만 듣는 게 소소가 되나 이 생근내는 통절들이 피가 침몰요래
Also regarding the accumulation of merit, yesterday we mentioned Miller Rabjam, this quote by Miller Rabjam where he said that the meditator in the cave and that meditator's benefactor will attain enlightenment together. And that is because the meditator, the practitioner, dedicates his merits for the sake of that benefactor, and then through this auspicious connection that they then have established, they attain enlightenment together. And so that's actually how Buddhas have dedicated or prayed for sentient beings. And what that means is that the merit of the Buddha can also, through dedication or prayer, ripen in the mind streams of sentient beings. So they can receive the Buddha's merit. So sentient beings, there are endless sentient beings. They are as limitless as the sky. And then the Buddha's aspiration is that for as long as those limitless sentient beings exist, I am going to make an effort to liberate them. This is my aspiration. There's this prayer that says, the extent of sentient beings is endless, such is the limits of my aspiration, or endless in other words. And so nowadays, in times of degeneration, sentient beings can only care about this life. They are attached to the pleasures of this life and have no time to practice. So for those sentient beings, the Buddha gave a lot of skillful means to liberate their minds. For example, there is the liberation by seeing, or liberation by tasting or touching, and so on. All of these are methods of liberation that are blessed by the Buddha's aspiration to liberate sentient beings. So the Buddha gave that to us, beings who do not have the opportunity to practice much. For example, if you have this red sticker that contains the liberation by seeing mantra, if you stick that on top of your home's entrance door, then whoever passes beneath it, or whoever sees it, or somehow comes into contact with it, is said to purify the negative karmas accumulated in 300 million aeons. So this negativity here, what that is basically the clinging to a self since beginningless time. And that which purifies it is love and compassion. So when all obscurations are cleared away, it is like an ice melting into the vast ocean. Right now we don't have a lot of opportunity to practice, but for example, just wearing a t-shirt with the liberation by seeing mantra printed on it is a method, a natural method to accumulate merit. So that's, for example, called also liberation by wearing. And then there's this also liberation by wearing or touching mantra. It is said that even if an animal is touched by it, then at least certainly it will not take birth in the 3 lower realms. It will take birth in the God realm. And actually the God realm is also a place that other religions actually also recognize. It is just a world, a place where one experiences a great joy and happiness. So temporarily the doors to the lower realms are closed. And then, for example, there is those blessing pills that we eat. That is called liberation by tasting. So that is all a skillful means for us to naturally, effortlessly actually accumulate merit. And it benefits sentient beings, whoever comes into contact with those substances. And the more we benefit sentient beings, the more we are purifying obscurations. So it's just for that purpose. And actually, when we help others, we are actually helping ourselves the most, because ultimately self and other are not separate. So when we heal others, we are really healing ourselves. We think that self and other are separate individuals, but that is actually not the case. But believing that, we have an attachment to ourselves and aversion against others, and which is very similar to the hand hates the foot, and then they fight. So actually the hand and the foot belong to the same body, but they don't know that. So it's really similar to that. Sentient beings who are ignorant are like that. So the Buddha gave vast methods to benefit those sentient beings. This is what is meant with polishing with the aspiration prayer. If you have these methods of accumulating merit, then naturally and gradually the ice block of the mind will melt. And then when that happens, then you will begin to gradually begin to think about the nature of the mind. You will take more interest in the nature of the mind. The more love arises, the warmer your mind becomes, the more the ice block can melt. The more interest actually you pay to the mind. Even if you just see it for a moment, it's because the ice block has melted. And so ultimately, when the ice has completely melted and merged to be one with the ocean, one becomes Buddha. And so that's also the purpose of those teachings of Dzogchen and Mahamudra. They are a method to melt that ice block completely, so one becomes a Buddha. So that is the meaning of polishing with aspiration and accumulating merit. And so even if you think that there's nothing I can give, there's nothing I can do, some people, for example, say, I really would like to do retreat and practice, but I don't have money or I don't have time, or somehow I'm tied down and have no opportunity. And so for those individuals, the Buddha specifically gave those methods of liberation. And there's a total of 6 kinds of liberation. For example, there's liberation by seeing, and liberation by hearing, and liberation by touching, and liberation by tasting, and liberation by feeling or sensation, and by seeing, and so on. There's all kinds of forms of liberation or wearing, and they all are very meaningful. And therefore it's important to understand their qualities, because if you understand their qualities, then you will really hold on to these liberation objects, and then you will naturally will want to wear them and practice them, have them around with you. Actually, just using those skillful means of liberation given by the Buddha actually also are very helpful for you to begin to see the nature of your mind. First, you show an interest because obscurations are being purified, and finally, as a result, you will see the nature of the mind.
드르기자 수놈데 무베 용어티 잠마 무베 중 양 수놈 그 준데 하고 그래 그다 무베 용어티는 티니 오 다sem지 삼체 도나 사수츠부제 담고 여보 계자들 기타 총총적이나 내 같단 타톡 있는 데 용어 요래 타톡은 배우시 보지 다 내로고 도마톡 봤대 성지 공방토야 내가 본 제걸 하더니 쟤는 맞았나 토리신 그 용어티 차탕데 이제 맞춰서 좀 봤을 때는 물 드니 something 싫어버티니 티 타톡 상지 공방 타톡을 이제 네, 이 ramyin 요거요래. 그랬더니 배우들이 망문에 기타 듣고 요래 기타 때도 미 조람상 보람이 그게 그 기타도 유면 체 적하리 저 기타도 뭐 지지 뭐 이게 지원들 레드비 하고 온 거예요. 레드비 하고는 내가 지금 어디 산속성의 요디리 산속성의 요디리 내가 동네들랑 그 레게 레레스 대신에 내가 그 저때 물추는 데서는 그 준성도 봐 양양짤 덕도 봐 되거든요. 지와처럼 모르더니 개별로 존도 그래. 야 동네들 요는 그 당이랑 그 유모 먹을 레게 봐. 동네랑 그 당이지. 개와 유면 쓸려 덕도 봐. 지와처럼 먹을 준비가 몇 개요 그래. 되거든요. 유마 쳐봐. 되는 속나. 되는 다속 사지에 공pon절 톱로 그래. 뭐 용띵이 돼서.
And so then, regarding those roots of virtue and merit, we need to also understand the benefits, the good qualities of dedicating them, and the faults of not dedicating them. So we need to understand this continuum of merit. So regarding the qualities, the good qualities of dedicating them, it is that even if you just practice the slightest virtuous act, if you do it for the benefit of sentient beings, so if you seal it with a dedication of bodhicitta, then it will always bear a twofold result, a temporary result and an ultimate result. So ultimately, you will realize the nature of your mind, you will attain enlightenment. But also temporarily, if you do not just think about yourself and this life, but if you think of sentient beings, then also through that you will achieve all of the happiness of the higher realms. By practicing generosity, ethical discipline, and patience, you will find a precious human body. For example, by practicing meditation and wisdom, you will attain the ultimate fruition of Buddhahood. And these qualities arise naturally. And if you do not dedicate your virtuous acts, then even if you actually practice virtue, even if your conduct, your actions are fine and excellent, if you do not dedicate, then these merits will come to an end. So the continuum will be interrupted. So what can we do so the continuum will remain uninterrupted? First, we need to understand karma. And that is, when you experience happiness, then you should recognize this is the quality of bodhicitta. If you experience suffering, you should recognize this is my karma. And if you know that, then you will be able to make an effort to create the causes for your own happiness continuously. So you are creating a continuum of merit for the future. And in that way, you're creating happiness for all future lives. And if you suffer, you recognize that to be the karmic ripening of your own afflictive emotions, ultimately. So knowing that, you will be able to accept the suffering you experience, and you will be able to avoid creating more causes of suffering. So you interrupt that continuum. So in this way, the eyes of karma will open for you, and that will enable you to carry on or sustain a continuum of merit that will ultimately bring you to the state of enlightenment.
이리나 다들은 이 여러분들 뭐람디 너 아들 너무 저렇게 어떻게 잡나 말이 얘는 어떻게 잡나 저 돌아 빈밤이나 빈소 요 말이 저로 초라 또 다를 모르 배워 미만 뭔데 나ጭ고 그쪽고 요래 나는 뭐 제대 가서자 참 내가 참 야는 다를 모르는 용도 솔직히 못 당해 빈밤은 정나 때랑진이가 저돌아 계산을 요는 알아들이 이 밤에야 사람 때서 요래 총례도 찍고 직장을 해 하다 싸면 딴 거 그러지 네 김보를 뭐지가 나는 들 라마지 사비 난들 나게 가든을 놓고 요래 양 저는 냐면지 네 지시에 따르고 용도면 대비에 탑요 말이 나그 가든을 놓을 때에서 고하는 거 저는 냐면이 했잖아 되는데 롤비 되거든요 라마 종을 요반하기 때문에 대선 세트봐 왜 맞춤 요래 대회들이 다 주로나 봐 랑그 고안하니 가리 고추걸 때문에 들이 레시제 반낭전이 들어가가 가는 랍시기 요말에 토에 요말에 들어가가 간 것도 대쇼 요래 대쇼는 신시 대도 나와 도지치 라마선이나 들님마보다 기보 장마마 요래 라마 교비시니 대상신이 양자 저속 대도 컨트롤 쉬 양자 제시 쉬는 양당 양지전을 팽그래 차바는 양당한테 맞아면서 식답지 차바 찍자로 팽마면 때문에 나와 치 양당한테 쉬 양당한테 공부를 이 양이 지전 때는 아가들은 강시시 줘라 저기 랑냠냥 토리마도 쇼열 때 용용도 저기 열레
And so now we come to our actual topic, that is the prayer of the ground path and fruition, and that is on the program because Lama Tsering really insisted for this to be taught, and of course it's also beneficial because if it wouldn't be beneficial, then it would be pointless to have that as a teaching. It would be a waste of everyone's time. So definitely it is beneficial, but then. Also, many people some people actually come from really far away just to see me and to follow me, and then they spend all their money that they save for actually making a living to come here, and then they travel far distances. So it all entails a lot of hardship and effort. So I really have to make sure that I also benefit you. Because if you have an advantage, if I benefit you, then at least I won't have go away with negative karma from here, and maybe I also accumulate a little bit of merit. So actually, it's very similar to doing business in a way. I also have to make sure that I benefit you. You have to benefit. So in any case, this prayer was given to me by Khenpo Rinpoche, Khenpo Munso Rinpoche, and I always recite it, I meditate on it, I practice it. However, I have actually never received an explanation on it, a commentary on it, or teaching, or even a book on a commentary book. I've never actually got any commentary on it. But just through reading it again and again and practicing it, my understanding of the matter actually is increasingly deepening. And whenever I read it, I feel like the guru is right next to me. And then any doubt that I have at that time is just naturally cleared away by that. So it's really very beneficial personally. And so what I'm sharing now with you, my Dharma friends, what I'm going to share with you is really just the way I understand this prayer. And I'm just really sharing these words based on some personal experiences. But aside from that, I cannot tell you much more because I also actually have never received a commentary on it myself, nor do I have a lot of learning. But anyways, I'm very grateful for Lama Tsering for making this beautiful book for everybody. And then also regarding this book, there is, and this prayer, there are a lot of, especially Nyingma Lamas also, who have a lot of experience. So in the future, you should really ask them questions and request more instructions on this from them. Because it's important to keep deepening your understanding. It's just like rain is something that has to happen more than once. If it only rains once, then it won't be of a lot of benefit. Rain is only really beneficial if it keeps raining, if it rains many times. And so anyways, I will share these instructions with you to the best of my abilities, and these words are just based on my own personal experience. Then also I would like to say that we actually have an excellent opportunity for having these campos here too, and you should also take opportunity, use this opportunity and ask them questions. And also actually you can ask each other questions, the disciples personally. That's an excellent opportunity now that we are coming together like this. And now having those campos here, for example, is actually beneficial for you, but also for myself. It also helps me when I'm giving teachings. So it's very difficult actually to have them here all together. So we should recognize this fortune. And then now, when we are receiving these teachings, try to not just follow or focus on the words and try not to be distracted to the outside, but just look at your mind. All we are really talking about here, we are going to talk about only the nature of the mind. So when you listen to these words, then don't really intellectualize too much and focus too much on the words, but just look at your mind when you listen to those words. What is the nature of the mind? How is my mind? So as you listen, just look inward at your mind, because that is all we are talking about. So if you are listening in such a way, then actually the teachings will become much easier for you to understand.
그래서 뭐도 새도 가르쳐도 야, 나 니 거기는 뭐라면 내가 제의도 그러니까 나올 좀만 내리셔 나올 좀만 다다 뭐네 다 양자양도 딱지더만 딱 나대 요담 매담 딱지더만 들이 딱지 동사만 해 봐도 차고 들이 탕주고 채우려 갑자기 딱 문제지 딱 좋아서 못지 들이 따고 그랬지.
So then the text begins with, on page 3, homage to glorious Samantabhadra. Literally, Samantabhadra means always well, always good. And that is the nature, the natural state of your mind. Within the natural state of your mind, there is no problem at all. It is like the sky, and the sky has no problems, right? So next it says, the true nature of things is naturally free of conceptual projections. So this term here, conceptual projections, can also say it is free from elaborations. So an elaboration or a concept in the mind is that when we try to elaborate on something, then we either have to talk about it in terms of existence or non-existence, or basically in an affirming or negating way. But the mind is nothing like that. We cannot speak of it in any affirming way. It is that even the Buddhas have not seen it. So, for example, even the Buddha himself was not able to say and show exactly this is it. So the nature of the mind is inexpressible in that it is beyond words and thoughts. It is like the sky. That is the Dharmakaya. So it is nothing that can be expressed by words and nothing that can be conceived of by the mind at all. Because the one who conceives, the one who thinks, and the thought itself are non-dual. So this concept of I, an existing I, is a confused thought, a deluded thought. It is the dualistic consciousness that we all have right now. So, but then when you look at that consciousness, this I, where is that I? And no matter how much you try to find it, you will not find it. So it does not exist. Even the Buddhas have not seen it. So just think about this. Where is it? Where is this I? Where is this I in my mind? And you cannot find it. So you might say that I am this person. You're pointing at your body. That's me. But actually your body will die. Everyone's body will perish. It will be burned by fire and carried away by water and so on. So then where are you in the mind? So then rather a strange feeling arises. So then you realize my body and my mind are separate. Then where is it in the mind? What is my mind doing? When I'm sleeping, then in my dreams, there is someone who is engaging in activities, who is dreaming. It's that I. So then again, you look at that I, and you cannot explain it in terms of being this or that, existence or non-existence. So as you keep analyzing it and trying to find it, because you never find anything, eventually you will get tired of investigating it. You will become weary. And when this first weariness arises of this lack of finding anything, that's the point where the first feeling or the first experience that needs to be experienced arises.
먼저 이제 라마저를 샘피기 다 장 샘피구나 좀 나지 가서 구소지 나지 쳐 야, 마서 남고 나데 나사 많이. 그 속에 다주 나 톱소 나를 보지 싸울 톱마 성세. 처럼 내가 가르치요. 나 주시오.这되지. 나 주시오. 다들 남상을 했거래. 저 사지 좀 되게. 온장 로브를 좀 해줘. 나도 로브를 그랬고요. 어머니들이 찌는 나래고 오 나도 찌는 시는 래퍼도 그래도 그냥 마사 내가 차대 찌는 시는들이 차당 무슨 가롱적으로 되는 나도 래퍼도 오자 나도 제일 샤스 근데 이나 컴사로 저말 제르더니 그냥 대부를 강지 찌는 집아 제 맞지 그걸로 여기 찌는 시는 다시 나오는 바데 찌요래 저도 세상 하래요 말해 요 미니 바에 다시 당들이 다 콜이 심도 성하지만 딱 문이 좀만로 그래서 들이 말도 바탕지 에서 후창을 들이 요바 많이 잡는데 매바 많이 걸대고 지대 더 매바 말이 되니 나게 메즈 sempre 메즈 미긴 적인 감듯이 다 다시 소차서 그요래 다 존이디 존이디 다 로라래 대다 오늘 매바 많이 건데 건지 제 건데 이제가 sempre 요래 건데 이 sempre 호화가 이거 전에 다 라니 소디마 송이 Dzogchen 상지 지빈 셈을 용스 등이 말이 다니도 셈동만 남고 왔다 왔더라 나오 나도 나오냐 봤지 데려티니 자당 무슨 똑같은 코바처럼 요리지 나오 녀마 데려티니 라지가 녀마 바쪽게 요래 야 코바 데려서 동보를 싸마 사오로서 Dzogchen 상지 지빈 셈을 진피로데 인성을 나한테 흘러오라고 차대래. 다야지는 동보거든. 야가, 로마, 메도, 내가 소리, 사톡 상지. 인피를 썼대. 그래서 나기 제발거든. 콜대지더니. 콜대지 이제 맞아. 생활은 직정매. 대답을 차대니. 내가 오 매번 콜대지 이제 세비를 하. 매번 많이 콜대고 이제 콜대지 자와 생리잖아. 다 상지 습지 이제 찍어야지. 너는 거기서 보면 로마 뭐 풀어래. 대 로는 사면 대 남상대에서 고통을 해. 근데도 뭐 빈소다 이제 대가랑 그 로는 저기 로는 대회 소소를 피나 대 고통 주게요. 가야 하고. 상황 핀바요 이제 소소를 한번 이렇게 하고 저거요 말 배치다 그래.
So in the old days, there was once a disciple who requested teachings on pointing out the nature of the mind from his guru. And then in response to that, the guru said that, well, before I'll do that, first bring me your eye. Go find the eye and give it to me. And he said, okay, I will do that. So he went back home. And then he started to look for that eye, and he was up the whole night trying to look for the eye, and he couldn't find it. And then in the morning, he returned to the guru, and the guru asked him, "So have you found it? Where is it?" And he said, "I haven't found it, Rinpoche." And then the guru said, "And then what are you doing here?" And he said, "I'm here to receive Dharma teachings from you." And he says, there it is, there's your eye. I am here to receive Dharma teachings. The eye has arisen. So it arises momentarily due to a condition. So the Buddha himself had said, beings are obscured by adventitious stains, like momentary stains. So the eye arises momentarily due to a condition. A condition is there, and that leads to this concept of I. If you don't think about it, then it's like there is no self, no I. but it's because of conditions that trigger our attachment and aversion that this concept of I arises. So when you recognize that, you see that actually, because that is the case, the I is actually impermanent. It is a compounded phenomenon. It is unreal, actually. And for example, also we mentioned that something similar yesterday. Nagarjuna had said the I, this concept of the I, it arises due to a condition. A condition leads to the arising of the I. So when you look at it and examine whether it is here or not here, you realize that it is just a concept that arises due to a momentary condition, and therefore, as such, it is unreal. It is like a fake. It doesn't really exist. And when you understand that, then this grasping at an I will relax itself a little bit more. So it doesn't exist. Even the victorious ones haven't seen it, and yet it is not. It is neither is it non-existent, as it is the ground of all samsara and nirvana. So the mind has created a person, and the people create the world. For example, they create nuclear weapons and so on. So when you look at the one who has created it, the person is also only a momentary appearance. So regarding the, it is not non-existent because it is the ground of samsara and nirvana. Everything arises from this mind, samsara and nirvana. In the 37 practices, it says, all suffering without exception comes from wishing for one's own happiness. The perfect Buddhas arise from the altruistic mind. So the mind is actually like space. It is empty, but then due to this concept of I, there arises those thoughts of attachment, aversion, ignorance, which creates samsara. So once there is this concept of I, just naturally these 6 afflictive emotions arise. For example, it is like a tree that has like different parts, upper parts and the root. And those lower parts is like the lower states of existence, for instance. So the altruistic mind is what leads to enlightenment. So when you think about others, then this concept of I relaxes. And that is unlike the upper part of that tree with the branches and flowers and leaves. They represent the higher realms and the ultimate state of enlightenment. The mind, your mind, is the basis of samsara and nirvana. So Buddhas and sentient beings have one single basis of mind. That's also explained in the Samantabhadra prayer that I have been offering to my disciples for many years. And actually, regarding this prayer, whenever I read it, my understanding deepens even further. It's very easy to understand, and it has benefited my own practice really greatly, which is also why I've actually memorized that prayer. And actually, now when I'm giving teachings, I'm really trying to stick to those things that have benefited me the most. Whatever I really found useful, whatever I have really understood, that is what I am passing on. And of course, many other teachings are also beneficial, but then I cannot pass on these things. It's like I'm wearing like shoes that don't fit me, for example. So I cannot pass on something that I myself have not really understood so well. But this prayer, for example, is really something that has benefited me greatly, and that's why I'm passing this on.
지금은 고대지 고대 군지제 소나들이 호와의 가리 접독들 뒤들 샤도 살만한 속에 사제 용지지라 하고 말 사제 것은 용지 rabjam 하고 말이 단 호와의 내서 무슨 명통도 좀 마땅도 상만 양도 다들 딱 지당들이 별나 그때 근데 제대로 나게 샘다 샘지 탐지게 샘 저기 좀 받아서 돌아서 봐 탐지게 샘지 이제 이쪽 봐야 하고 타고요 되나 무슨 통계에서 좀 맞다도 양들이래 내가 딱지다 무슨 양상양도 딱지 딱용 그 딱지다 샘직이라면 들어 랍장 치고 랍장 중앙 저기도 신는 양바요 대형 샘직이란 말이 내덕 초과직이란 말이 이 족 나만나서 가리겠지 해도 가리게 차서 세부 제발이지 세부는 가리지 말이 상모당 다 샘들다 유무바 차라 유무바 족되게 마질린 좋아 직장이요 말이 대는 유무바 레고 라지 상모당한테 해당 뜻은 뭐라도 라주는 가리도 인지로 들어치기 주는 가리도 대해당 뜻부 그러면서 조금 가리죠 사례 상모당에 양도 따라 니는 유무방문지네 뭐지나 노아를 문이 유무베진도 없상 하고서는 드니 다 대로 저서 저는 요 말다 땅 아멜리나 수자자자 세는 유무바테오나 몽골지와 진짜대 자자장안 로건도 다 좋다고 그래 가서 데려오고 지는 빼 도들 이 들이 이제는 지지요 그러면 빼나 도들 빼야잖아 나시지 가리 숨진 꾸제 통하고 내도 코를 세야 마서 요 말해 야 가리 미시랑 끼들 대들로 파마 로보 로모 다 서진ኛ도 돼서요 말아 배라 미지나 야 뒤다 생위 와야지 생위 놀아버려 단 코와도 나지 뒤뉴면 뭐지 자와도 가니성 나래서 가니성 맞지 책도 같은 것이에요 랑상 당나가 먹이죠 같이 보지 같이 보지는 가 책이 좀 같이 보지 어떤 나이스리 랑상 놓고 그래 그래서 같이 보는 거는 가는데 속 같이는 보지 말샘 되는 일이 얘는 나미 바랑 나 다듬이 바랑 다좀 땅 알들 다 유목을 하서 다 탐지다 마땅 좀 샘직발에서 하고 오다 혼대 코와 이제 코와 삼아 세우지 직발에 코와는 유목을 진짜 없어요 하고
So it says here, it is the ground of all samsara and nirvana. So we need to here think about what has created samsara. So for now, for us, unless we really study a lot, it is difficult to understand all of the qualities of Buddha's three kayas. But we can look at the nature of samsara and what we can see now in terms of the ground of all samsara and nirvana now. So we think about the mind. What's the difference really between my mind and anyone else's mind? Like for example, a being with a body or without a body, humans and animals and so on. And you find that we all have the same basis of the mind. So when you think about it, for example, what we can see directly is humans and animals. So you can look at humans and animals. So this is how I have reflected. What's the difference between the mind of a human and an animal? What's the difference? So there are many different kind of animals. Some are very large, like mountains, and some are very small, like water, like drops. But then what is in their minds? What do they really want? And what is their experience of pleasure and pain and so on? And then why is it that they appear in this great variety of different bodies? It is because of their mind. It was all created by their mind. And how has the mind created it? with the coarse and subtle afflictive emotions, the 6 main afflictive emotions. So there is no shape and form of a being that was not created by the afflictions, by the mind. And so then knowing that, then you should think of the nature of these afflictions, for example, anger. Now when anger arises within you, how is it? How is your mind? And then how would it be in an animal, for example? Just think about the natural manifestation of anger or hatred. And then you will see how it often corresponds. So here we need to recognize the afflictive emotions first. Then we can understand that the 6 realms of samsara, all beings are created by those afflictive emotions. It's not like we want to appear in like as an animal, for example, but it naturally happens. So right now we have a precious human body, but if you continue to keep those afflictive emotions in mind, then you can be certain that in the future you will also take birth as such an animal, for example. For example, we can think of a poisonous snake and a form of anger. Like, why does it appear like that? For example, when anyone who sees a poisonous snake immediately runs away or wants to kill it, there's no choice. And that is because of anger, for example. And that happens in the human world too. For example, one person is always angry. And then even when that person is always angry, then nobody wants to stay around him. Not their father, not their mother, not their friends. No one wants to stay around them. So that's all made by the mind. The root of samsara is that, those afflictive emotions. And they arise from this concept of a self. So, for example, if somebody says something about you, something negative, or even just says your name, actually, immediately you react. For example, if someone says Garchen Rinpoche, then instantly I'm looking around and I feel like they're talking about me. But then who really is Garchen Rinpoche? The body is not Garchen Rinpoche, and likewise the mind is not Garchen Rinpoche. So actually what I'm doing is I am fixating on an I that actually doesn't exist. I'm holding on to a self where there is no self. And so the coarse and subtle afflictive emotions then project themselves as the various forms of humans and animals and so on. But then our mind is the same, one and the same. So, and that mind is the basis of all of samsara to arise. So here, when we read this line, we need to understand that everything in samsara is created by the afflictive emotions.
Delata Jumde Charge, technical Tajima, Drum Gojek, Tamsu Gombachi, Song to Tick Tong Song. Take it Tasa Ta Chesong, Hungry. Jumde Jake Samparans of Inch. Roar, you don't so Jumde Samparans of it. Sabakari, Numanas of Territory. Sanchuk Sempiran of Sanjeris. You move talk around the guy and watch of race. There's in same as ba, Hovak, dancing ba, dancing in you move talk. Then Hovan Munizua, she done around of Yava, send around of Yeda. Tamok Ranzo, Tonto, Tang Songson. Oh, go jab zina, ta, yeah. Same Nang Newman, but the go jab sona, that's also go jab. Yeah. Sancho Simpina, Sancho Simpina, Sancho Simpina, Saji, that's what Saji means some wrong. They got Daji, Meva, the switch of Hako to be on my Daji, only to the Jimping Lord is over the Tabajab dinner. Take another, they come tourism, that's what Saji Compang. That's what the same Zotang Terry. Oh, certain door didn't take it. Conte, you are same as Zotti, same day. Tanapatawa, Satonapatawa, Dina Powder. Jet a half of it. Yeship, Tawa, Tawa to the Tado, Tawa, she was around the second day of half of it. Yeshi is on Tawa Jin or marriage. The Duminero, she bought it, Duminero, Tamo, Simco, Tomasan, Simco Ranch, Tatasaki Doctor Water, not to touch it that I was sent in water. There is some Duminero, Tarangi. Kode you say, yes, this is not some tango, same just in the look that I see. Take in Hoa Zolok that I was all looked. Oh, Sanji Zolok that day. That is the Yimpin Sanji. Sanji is in Yimpin Rishas. Don't Hoa Dandy Rishas, it's our half or something. They jeans over it. Some cross the Commodore. Won't you Tomato? Oh, the Duminero, round you to some charity. Simply just Tawa Hako, the Hako jet at any Cordeja Zoro. There's a new Tawa the sun was also Pi, Shine, Namsi Soro Lebne. Ta Leon, new Bakari structure, digital Leon. Yishka long dinner, that I Yami Jeno, or Yami sent the young the roll. Tata, new Machina, new but Shikro. Sitting Jill Dogma, Kokano Dogma, there's a round top, the round top. Yet she's on the darkly half quarter. She was on top to the title of that level. What you could in the Jumdri Kitchen Samsara of Grace, Jumdri Kitchen. Legend, said to Kashi, what a legend, the color like singing the legend, Dante, the Tesson, what no real treated county, that's all Charlie or the same Jumdri Shah or something. You know what I'm crewing under what I was over. Mari, Rana knew what I'm going to Ranga. Oh, just mean, just in Java. Shetanka to the race on the test of Hako, Jack Hako. She done the Jones, that's sort of your betis of me. It's just the shooting boat, the corn coverage some of what Sanjay ate here. Kunamana, so what I did, yet it only some tongue. You did lower it, Unjang lower to me, the Sanjay. Something on the Sanjay, you won't lower to me. Yet, do me jelly, do much about the Sanjay, or your lower to my Robert Macari, now never teach you. Now never called out, that's all here your money. That is the moment. New mobility is a mass horror. Oh, new mobility, that's all without. Then I got it, if you see you, that's what oh, Tangati. Did some Migolo, your black way. Kunga, Tangati, title new moment, sound, the less sound.
Here, also when we read these words, what we need to think about here is the subtle workings of karma, cause and effect. Regarding that, there is one quote I came across that really made that very clear for me, and that is from a text of the Jigong Kagyu lineage by Jigden Sumgun. It's called the Gong Jig. And in there, it says that karma, or cause and effect, is the momentary like reflection of one's thought, one's inner thought. And so that is the 6 realms, the beings in the 6 realms of samsara are this momentary projection or appearance, or kind of the self-form of their inner thought. They are the manifestation of their own afflictive emotions. A manifestation of bodhicitta, for example, is the Buddha. Manifestation of the 6 afflictive emotions are the beings in the 6 realms. So it is made by the mind. The basis of samsara is self-grasping, which leads to the 6 afflictive emotions. So then the hell beings are the manifestations of hatred. The hungry spirits are the manifestations of stinginess. The animals are the manifestations of ignorance. And so when we understand this, then we are able to close the door to afflictive emotions in our mind. And if we do that, then we are closing the doors to birth in the lower states of existence. So it is said in the 37 practices that perfect Buddhas arise from the altruistic mind. So for the time being, actually, no one can really understand that self and other are inseparable. So we have a perception of self and other, and because of that, it is most important for us that we hold on to, that we sustain an altruistic mind. And as a result of that, we will temporarily take birth in the higher realms, and ultimately we will attain enlightenment. So we need to understand here how the mind creates all of that. How does the mind create samsara and nirvana? So the mind itself is like space. It is clear and empty. It is said that when you know the basis, then no other view is needed. That is the view. So it is the natural state of your mind, or the primordial like nature, the primordial natural state of the mind. And that is your completely pure, this pristinely pure state of mind in its natural state. So in the teachings of Mahamudra and Dzogchen, that is what we are introduced to, the state of mind in its natural state, that is free of all concepts, all thoughts, the primordial mind. And that is the basis for samsara and nirvana. We call it the nature of the mind. The way samsara is created is like that, and the way the Buddha is created is through the altruistic mind. So that we need to understand very clearly. And then we understand that it's actually just a condition. One condition leads to samsara, and the other one leads to Buddhahood. But actually in the mind, all of it does not exist. The mind is just naturally clear and pure, and without any conceptual elaboration at all. So that is what needs to be understood here. And so for that, we need to understand those subtle workings of karma. When one dies, the consciousness leaves the body, then the consciousness is taken by the karmic winds. And that means that whichever of the afflictions, the afflictive emotions is predominant, the strongest, these are the karmic winds that will take the consciousness. So for a practitioner, it is different. The practitioner does not become controlled by the afflictive emotions. Even if they arise, they are able to let go of them again. So they will not pursue the afflictive emotion. And that is what we call freedom, or like freedom of awareness. Awareness is free and is held with stability. So if you know that, you know the view. So it is, the view is sustained by sustaining a stability of awareness. So now we speak about karma, but we just really talk about it. We think I know karma and so on, but still, even though we say that, there still is this selfishness. We consider ourselves as most important because we don't really understand that karma is actually happening within the mind. And then when somebody comes to hurt you, immediately you are offended and you say, oh, he's hurting me. Actually, you're really hurting yourself by not recognizing that. For example, like this example of the poisonous snake, who is a manifestation of hatred. So if you just understand one single example, actually, that's enough for you to understand the fault of hatred, for example. And so within the basis is that is Buddha nature, none of that actually exists. So if you do not follow it, whatever arises, that mind is the mind of the Buddha, that single basis that is explained in the Samantabhadra prayer. So karma is momentary. It arises due to a momentary conditions. So the Buddha had said, beings are actually Buddhas. All sentient beings are actually Buddhas. They are only obscured by momentary stains. But what actually is there when those stains have disappeared is that primordial, fundamental nature of mind. And now when you try to find that concept of an I, of a self, we have mentioned you cannot find it. So it is only a temporary condition that leads to an affliction. Due to that affliction, there is this concept of me. And we always come back to it because we get angry, for example. For example, if someone insults me, then immediately I'm stirred up and this I has come back. He is insulting me, for example. I'm what's going to happen to me? I have this problem or that problem. And everything is just about me all the time, or someone is hurting me. And so in this way, as we are holding on, fixating on our afflictive emotions, we are actually accumulating karma.
Deswegen ist es sehr hilfreich, in dieser Weise zu denken. Wie der Buddha es sagt, alle Lebewesen sind ausschließlich Buddha. Allein, vorübergehend, getrübt oder verdeckt. Bewusstheit in ihrer Grundnatur ist von jeher frei von all dem Ausgedachten und dem Gespinst von Ich und anderen und der Geistesstörung. Was uns jetzt und hier verdeckt, das ist die Idee von Ich, die in Momente entsteht und woran alle die verschiedenen Geistesstörungen sich entzünden. Und aus dieser Perspektive wird es dann deutlich, wie es diese Wegscheide gibt. Und ich habe sehr oft darauf hingewiesen, wie gut es wäre, dieses Samantabhadra Wunschgebet zu lesen, in dem es heißt, als eine Grundlage und zwei Wege. Das hat mir selber sehr viel geholfen und versuche eigentlich hier in alledem, was ich mitteile, immer nur das zu sagen, was mir selber von großem Nutzen war, wo meine eigene Erfahrung sich mit verbindet. Etwas, wo ich selber eine Erfahrung habe, das kann ich mit gutem Gefühl mit anderen teilen und dann wird wahrscheinlich auch daraus ein Nutzen entstehen.
간도 많이 유지 열는데 가와당 레와 베나 다딘 가와요래 직진 가면 또 참하게 된 잠불입니다. 따완 잠을 나만 다소 강이 니린 정도요래 강이 가를 때 자완했더니 가시게 요 진짜 뭐 보래 ram성래 대본이 딱본이 되어서 농지기 남지 생기 딱와 좀 다다데 직진 봤다 되래 문제리스 무조건 봐 문제리스 무조건 봐 가시게 뛰는 파 또만이 뛰는 파 더트랍다 뛰는 파네 오 직장문도 저 레좀 저양도 샘도 주림도 있어요 매살 로고요 다 되니 빙 갖다 쳐버려. 저거 요지 이거 매일 갖다 쳐버려. Dzogchen 그 땅 갖다 싸우는 요 말이지. 가래서 왜 말이지. 동만 이게 또 자서 붙이 숨버려. 동만 용기는 갖다 요 말이지. 소주 가래 싸우면 되래서. 그래서 요 싸움을 그 요능이 되지. 다들 된 말이 다 요반서 받대 캐리기 이제 몇 통도 없어. 가시행을 해서 매일 당연히 문제 매일 손이 차를 배 강에 쳐버려. 그래서 따로 선자 죽게 되더니 다 제타와진 통투고요 말이에요. 나와 사제에 되는 것도 싸우는 요mer스 라랑게 썸노 동상을 셈 코랑 라시지 은혜진 통을 가도 요 말이에요. 강래 간드만 유대를 제고나 줘야 요 말이에요. 다 요배 요바시는 은혜 요바는 줄이 매배 바시에서 직접 맞아봤던 거래. 들싸우는 것들이 레좀 데려지 봐. 양중 첨보래. 딱반지나 중 첨보래. 제반지나 중 첨보래. 그래서 중랑 주거나 중지는 다들 흘러간 거요래. 그래서 딱반지한테 요상하지는 요 말에 선후직인 도로고 나귀 생긴 직접 내기 요 말이 누제랑 길이 딱반이 다 좁고 조문이 딱반이서 다 적셔를 다 나가시자 다 시에서 다 동해지고 대너기 놀러 죽직인 세즈 참아들면 다 말이 하고 말이 뭐다 봐 하고 무슨 씨와 요리스요 보고는 다 말이 다만 하고 요리 시선은 오케이 돼 뭐다 봐 하고서 됐다고 하고 또 그래 중대도 딱 받치는 쌈김 잡혔던 게 연구요 딱 봐 이거 말이 그것도 하고 마서 제바지는 매바지는 하고만 가서 샘나도 어디 거기 매대 직접 매들 내집이 전용어디 직접 따고 세바 땅하나 소지는 노가 나도 땅 녀모가 라주바 짜장 제그 요래 근데 용을 딱 세고래서 몇 가지는 딱 봐요 말이스 소소소 제고래서 다 같이 메시지 됐다 용진서요 다 고쳐 내 가세세나 듣고 레지 망벌서 민걸 다른 잡을 무슨 민거요다가 대체도 무슨 일을 남지 그 잡을 이제 갑자기 딱 등에 가리면 그래서 무슨 민거요래 레지 민거요 딱 이가 등에 놓성하지 남바 사제에 된 간데 요 말에서 세군대로 은혜지 하고서는 간도 짜는 요 간도 많이 주지 열래데 시체요 말든 간도 요 말에서 주지 열래데서 독지 제내로 도와줘 Dzogchen si 받았잖아. 그때 추탐지 랑 셈을 맞아 봐 저요 말했어. 랑 셈백 조요랬어. 대 하고는 람 탐지 그 정보 람 첨보 주심지 사지에 탐지 펴서 람 근데 이거 람들을 만들어 놓사요 말했어. 배에서 람 첨보 첨보.
So then it says, there is no contradiction here, for it lies beyond the realm of expression. So contradiction, there's now in a conventional sense, there's a lot of contradictions in this world. There's a lot of contradictory views and so on in this world. So for example, there is some who say that everything really exists. This world is real and it is solid and stable. It will always be here. So we believe that. Some people believe that. And then they also believe that the beings living in this world also really actually exist. So that is in a way more of like a materialistic, eternalistic view. And then there is some who think they do understand emptiness, and they have examined it to the smallest atomic particle, and then find that nothing exists, and also no karma exists, and no mind exists, and nothing exists. And so first, there seems to be first a contradiction between those views. One says everything exists, and the other one says nothing exists. Now, according to the Dzogchen view, actually there is no contradiction here. You can say it in whichever way. For example, His Holiness the Dalai Lama had once said that that's actually one quality of emptiness, that there is no contradiction, because everything is empty, whatever you think, that's how it is for you. So if you think that things really exist, you think that that's all real, all of that is truly here, then to one extent one can agree to that and say here in the sense of, yes, you can see people, for example, they're here. But then also you can agree to similar views when it comes to non-existence. So basically, in this world there is said to be 360 mistaken views that do not see how things really are. And these are all transcended by the Buddhist view. And that's why there is no contradiction also in the Buddhist view at all. And so that is because when you really understand and really see the true nature of the mind, then there is no more contradiction. Of course, in terms of existence, for example, if you wanted to talk about what all exists, then clearly there is no end to what you could talk about. And then if you speak of things in terms of existence, then it also could make sense in a way. It really seems like things exist. So you could make a case for that. But then when you go the other way and try to convince someone that things don't really exist, then you can also make a case for that, because ultimately you can't find anything. So both views, affirming and negating, or eternalism and nihilism, are mistaken views, are a fault. And they are a fault because in the end they will lead you astray. So for example, if one is holding on to an eternalistic or affirming view, it is not tenable, because in the end, for example, this world will not last. It will come to an end. And also, everyone born in this world, every being will die. Everything is impermanent. Nothing will always be there. And even in a smaller sense, for example, companions will separate from each other. For example, one companion may die, and then the other one might not understand what happened and thinks now he's dead, he's gone, and they might even want to commit suicide then. So everything in this world, this life, is impermanent. Even though there is love and there is companionship, it is also impermanent, and things change. And so ordinary people, that's something often or ordinary people even can understand, actually. But now the thing with eternalism is that when we hold on to the true existence of things and the permanence of things, and we are resisting change, then the suffering of that is really actually unimaginable. So the suffering there is great. And so then in terms of nihilism, there is the opposite. Then there is a denial of everything. Nothing exists. Person doesn't exist, karma doesn't exist, past and future lives don't exist. So therefore, since there is no karma, then we can just kill people, beat people, harm people, hurt people, and so on. So when you have that kind of view, then the afflictive emotions are completely unrestrained. And you actually are accumulating a lot of negative karma, but in complete denial. So then actually often people even then consider it a good thing to hurt and kill other people and justify it in many different ways, always considering themselves as most important. And however much negativity is created, it will ripen in the future. We can actually see it's ripening in so many places in the world where there is so much suffering. All of that is the actual ripening of past karmas. So holding such either of those views is mistaken. We can clearly understand that, can we not? So in the Buddhist view, there is no such a contradiction, because we understand the nature of the mind. And so regarding that, then it says, may all realize this great perfection, the true nature of the ground. So this great perfection, it means Dzogchen in Tibetan, is perfection or completion, because within one's own mind, all phenomena of samsara and nirvana are complete, included within one's own mind. And so when you understand your own mind, then that is the greatest path. That is why it is called great in the great perfection or great completion. That is the path that all the Buddhas of the 3 times have walked. So there is no greater path than that. So that's the the etymological meaning of this term, great perfection or great completion or Dzogchen in Tibetan.
Alles, was da geschieht, ist das Heranreifen von dem, was die Menschen, die darin leben, tun. Was wir jetzt und hier an Problemen und so weiter erfahren, das ist die Folge von solchen Angriffen in der einen oder anderen Richtung. Deswegen gilt es zu verstehen, dass diese Haltung Irrtümer sind. Weder das Vorhandensein auf der einen Seite ist auf Dauer richtig, noch der Glaube, dass das Nicht-Vorhandensein. In eigentlicher Grundnatur hat in diesem, unserem bewussten Erleben, jede Idee Platz. Und dieses Bewusstsein selbst hat darin keinen Widerspruch. Deswegen heißt es hier, es ist ohne Widerspruch und doch jenseits von dem, was auszudrücken wäre. Das zu beschreiben, ist schwer möglich.
Hey.
Das zu beschreiben, ist schwer möglich und das ist die eigentliche Daseinsgrundlage, so wie es heißt hier, das ist, möge die Grundlage, die Daseinsweise der großen Vollendung erkannt sein. So, dies ist die darin, wo kein Widerspruch ist, das ist die Daseinsgrundlage, ist die eigentliche Weise des Seins, die wird hier als Vollendung bezeichnet, als die Grundlage der Vollendung. Grundlage deshalb, weil es den Ausgangspunkt gibt für den Weg, den man kann. Auf das Erkennen dieser Grundlage entfaltet sich der Weg der großartigen Vollendung.
링오 동부에 딱번 차례네. 오 동만 남갔다왜 토막 탐함해 봐. 다세군대로 라시 그때도 통내 때딱지도 샘 남갔다 그래. 하고는 대리 자당하고요. 오 동마 대다 남갔다 왜 연배 딱과 그 중장은 조금서요 말이지. 거기 다 중사중사를 중도 거요. 중도는 딱과 중독도 거요. 남갔다 와라. 야, 중 딱과 중도는 양 라위사위에 체분 받을 줄 알지. 다수지 처럼 저들 동만 남갔다 그래. 이런데 하고 싸워도 하고 남갔다 그래. 랍트도 그래요. 남갔다 그래. 랍트도 이 라위사위에 시고 그래. 제가 체분 중도는 조금서요 말이지. 또 딱지니 서쪽의 중독도 그런 말이지. 제가 놀진 차서 서쪽의 중독을 섭했는데 또 놀진 차. 라위사위에 체분 받을 줄 알지. 이게 달리가서 특징감이나 저쪽 그게 제 당사 저쪽도 인도는 말이지 또 재미 이전에도 되더니 돈이든 이제 손도 좀 받은 이제 남편까지 이제 차로라니 좋아 몇 번씩 이제 특징감이나 저쪽 그게 이 사기 삼지 몇번 이제 대례송에 들이다 저거 나만 나서들이다 롱건이 저거지 죽이니다 되는 정도요. 특징감이 나서 저거지. 어떻게 맹섬다가 됐다 다다 맹 이라 용진심 보선 용진심보선데 딱지니 중도 잡아서 딱지니 중도 수적 중도 보면야지. 딱지니 중도 잡아.
Then it says, in essence it is empty, hence free from the limitations of permanence. So the essence of the mind is empty, like the sky. And that dispels the fault of eternalism. And so then when you understand the nature of the mind, some can see the nature of the mind from just a glimpse. And when you glimpse the space-like of the nature of the space-like nature of the mind, then actually you have really understood the nature of the mind. And so because of the space-like empty nature, no one can find a fault in terms of finding like accusing Buddhism that it is eternalistic. No one could say that. So because in other different philosophical schools, we always try to find each other's fault and where the other one could be wrong. But in terms of eternalism, one couldn't find a fault in the Buddhist view because of that, because of the empty space-like nature. And then it says, by nature it is clear and free from the limitations of nihilism. And so then, again, look at your mind. So you have found that its essence is empty like the sky. But that's not all there is to it. It also is clear. You know, there is a knowing capacity to it. You can say, for example, my nature is like the sky. So because you can say that, it means there's clarity. There is a clear knowing awareness that knows its own space-like nature. And that is called this awareness that is naturally clear. And due to that, no one can say that the Buddhist view has the flaw of nihilism. So it's free from the fault of nihilism. So because it is free of both faults of eternalism or nihilism, it is like Vajradhara. Then it says on the next page, its capacity unobstructed. It is the ground of manifold emanations. So then we have said the path all begins with the motivation of benefiting other beings. So we develop the four immeasurables. And then the mind is a union of emptiness and compassion. And that means that the mind is all pervasive, like the empty open sky. And that pervasiveness is pervaded naturally. Its nature, its pervasiveness is a natural, effortless compassion, like an unobjectified natural state of compassion. And from that quality of compassion, which is the pervasiveness of the mind, the various rupa kayas or form emanations appear of the nirmana kayas and sambhoga kayas. So we give it different names, those three kayas, which represent three main qualities. But first here we need to understand that the Buddhist view is free from the mistaken views of eternalism and nihilism. So no one could find a fault in that view because of that, because of emptiness and clarity.
Weil eben das, worin was frei ist von der Idee von Vorhandensein und von Nichtvorhandensein, darin keinen Unterschied hat. Es ist leer, deutlich zugleich.
It is divided into three, yet in truth there are no such differentiations. So don't think that these three names, words, are separate. They are a quality of one mind. So there is no differentiation between them. And then may all realize this great perfection, the true nature of the ground. So the mind is clear, it is empty, and infused by effortless or unobjectified compassion. So when you look at your mind, then you see, I clearly know that I'm aware, and the state that is devoid of a self, that in itself becomes this unobjectified compassion. So those of you who have some experience with this practice, you will understand that this is how it is, that there is no differentiation between those three. They are not three separate things, but they are one nature of your mind. It is like one wholeness.
Da ist nichts Greifbares, Fassbares und doch zugleich natürlicherweise erhellend Deutliches. Leer und deutlich zugleich, ohne dass man einen Unterschied darin machen könnte, das Leere von dem Deutlichen, das Deutliche von dem Leeren unterscheiden könnte, sondern leer und deutlich ununterscheidbar. Möge diese Daseinsweise von großer Vollendung als Grundlage erkannt werden.
쌈짐에 잡 조도 공통 잘스 다 쌈짐에 잡지는 단이 돈도 건데 이 고로 쌈도 다 시바 롱도를 보면 뭐 되는 거 추주 홍보 동차 예비죠 사비에 저 레레는 동차 예비죠 사비에 되는 거봐 장미 봐라 사제 장미 봐 별 들지 내롱 마다 봐 심지 담지 들이 들어 따와 남만 나서 드라마다 요네 들어 산지 좀 되게 그 쌈짐에 잡되나 산지 좀 되게 송마리 송나 육진감 동자만 보려더니 거기 추적으로 동자만 보고 그랬어. 뒤에 잠시 하고 있는 책 가까이 소소소소리 동적마다 요말스. 동적 보면 다 독지지. 세부 내록 뒤에 코나 하고 송잖아. 그렇게 잠시 내록 하고 어디 책 넘버 공부해야 되다. 잠시 공부를 줘서. 배지에서 쌈이 잡대당 콘데이 시 조야 요말이 그래서 가든 울롱만 뭐 참아 들이 로또 참아볼 참나 차야 매봐 대다 파도도 제는 대다 빼는 거 그렇게 쌈지면 잡지 근데 존도 되나 오 따지래 요도는 데리 공시 봐지 요도는 존도 거라 들이다 존도 오서면 셈 동반나 갔다 그래 미지 존도 조금 잡아지 오 미지 딱딱딱 해다지 좀 해봐지래 근데 doktor travas yuta mepe yuta me samne me romdo kantan charge yuta mepe sonti na pari che ta yumi ta chen ta da trava ta ti zong de yang de xie wo men do ta xie de xie xie de ta wu de sam xie yang pam ro me de sam xie de long ro yo le ti zong de ta long ro ba zo ba mang bo yong go yo le ti de ne ti ta 다 롱다운을 빠가지나 파바를 원미다와지 다만 파신 다 공부 받대 로망보를 당 주고 받는 거 되게 고는 저거 되지나 봐 요래 눈 주를 자르자자 독성을 눈 주를 자르자 참아시고는 사지야 당신으로 그래서
Then it says inconceivable and all free of all superimposition, one-sided fixation. So this term inconceivable here, now if we were to try to elaborate on Samsara and Nirvana, it just becomes inconceivable. There is just endless elaboration that could be done on it. Also on the Dharma, for example, there is 84,000 different Dharma teachings, and each of them is divided into further 84,000 subcategories. And then there is countless, limitless Buddhas who have appeared in limitless aeons in order to benefit those beings who have not realized the nature of their mind. So the Buddha himself had said that in thousands of worlds, I have turned the wheel of Dharma in thousands of different ways. And while my words are distinct or separate, I have really only taught one essential meaning. And that's, for example, now, as a side note, like the Dzogchen teachings. And so then the Buddha said, if you practice this one, then you practice all my words. And so what this one thing is the nature of the mind. All the dharmas are for the sake of understanding, realizing the nature of the mind. And so if we were to elaborate on the nature of samsara and nirvana, it could really become endless. There is many scriptures, the many words of the Buddha, there is these various scripture collections that teach all of that. And even if you would try to study them, you would not complete your study even in tens and thousands of years. There is just too much of it. It's endless. So that is this inconceivability. So then it says, on things being either existent or non-existent completely dissolves. So this one-sided fixation on things being existent or non-existent, that dissolves. As you mentioned before, we cannot say, we cannot like superimpose, we cannot say that things really exist because everything is, the mind is empty like the sky. And then we cannot superimpose or claim that things do not exist, as you mentioned before, because there is samsara and nirvana. So basically, the Buddhist view is free from all extremes. We already mentioned that before. So it says, the full import of this turns back even the tongue of the victors. So then basically, those who hold on to eternalism will be defeated, and those who hold on to nihilism will also fall down from their views. And so regarding that, there is a lot of debate between the different tenet systems, philosophical schools, and these debates are done based on the scriptures and logical reasoning. And that path, for example, is referred to as the Madhyamaka, or middle way, of the Prajnaparamitas and so forth, that you can also study for many, many years. And regarding that, also we have these kenshins here now that you can ask questions. But now, because it is also endless, it turns back even the tongue of the victors here. It means that if you would try to lay it all out and explain it all, even the Buddhas would get tired of it.
중주를 되어야 좀 토타 발미 등설 진부 영성 내 라비오 말해 내 너희 통타면 내 라비오 말해 통타 발미 등설 진부 영들은 다 샘디 토마 강의송 하고 말이야 나송 받지 그러나 오 당아 마인가를 가르치어 라나 대디 인사에 좀 가지 들어서 말이 샘디 남카가 베리 샘디 남카다와 하고는 얘네들이 서로 지와다 판초함에 봐 하마고는 오 깨끗깨끗이 제체 그래서 당아 시송 당아지 다신이 동에 깨끗깨끗이 네 저기 동에서 와들이 성분대로 봐도 저기 동에 요래 심지니 지와 저기 동에 저기 상태 요래 대회 성분대로 하고서는 남한테로 통타 발서 매가 있게 생포를 제시배가 통도는 통타 발미 등설 준비 다 성분대로 통대 걸자도 남한한지 남카다 semdan namka chemina aso ti song song go ya pa che namka la thoma thama yo ma do le loge tada zhu ta 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 ji loge ta che dong sa yo ma de thoma ka ni song thama ka ni song ta che dong sa yo ma si per na la lo ma ji ki che ka ti song namka di ji sol ka yo si ta namka di ji sol ka yo si ji song de song no de 나쁘지 절대 남카 코는 다 매너요 소소리 기설되고는 나가 고소대 기설은 이거 그래 되는 남들 니 답차를 가리나다 코든이 이거 저거 요리지 저 사요 말이 제가 답만 저거 요래 정말로 봐요 그래 니 내버 코든이 시기를 저 당시 경기 진짜 난 남카를 우지 좀 원래 안 가대 된 거 고소대 그래
And then, without beginning, middle, or end, it is a great expanse of deep clarity. So, the mind, where does it begin? Actually, we cannot say that. Now, some people might think that it begins when I take birth, when I enter the womb, for example, when I take birth. But actually, that's not when it begins. The mind is like space. And within space, there is no birth and death. Birth and death is like a momentary concept. So we think that I am dying or I'm born and so on. And those who have not realized the nature of mind suffer from that idea that there is death. They are afraid of death. They suffer from dying. Those who understand the nature of mind know that it is like space, and within space actually there is no beginning, no middle, and no end. Space is never born and it never dies. So that's the nature of the mind. And when you see that, then you just need to remain within that state of seeing it. That mind is not separate from space. Within space, there is no beginning and there is no end. And it is something that transcends elaborations. It cannot be figured out with the intellect. It cannot be explained with the intellect in terms of beginning and end and where it comes from and so on. So one time there was a disciple who asked me a very direct question, and the person asked that, no, the sky, space, like, where does it come from? How did it come into existence and when? And so actually in space there is no center and no boundary. So then this person said, and this person was asking where is like the kind of like the center of the sky in terms of where it comes from. So even though it actually has no center and no boundary, what I told that person is that wherever you are, right above your head, that's where the center of the sky is. So actually, I felt a bit sorry for the person because maybe they don't understand. Actually, we can't even ask questions like that. So I'm also wondering, I'm asking more the Kempos here, would it be okay then to give an answer like that in that case? No, just saying that, no, if you think that there is a center, then the center is right above your head. Wherever your head is, that's where the center of the sky is.
Mir. Und ich bin aber nicht so gelehrt in den Worten und man möge mir verzeihen. Vielleicht sollten wir diese Frage auch an die beiden Campos nochmal stellen. Ich bin mal gefragt worden von einem Schüler, der hat gesagt, du, sag mal, wo ist eigentlich das Zentrum des Raumes? Wo? Frage. Raum hat doch kein Ende, hat dann auch kein Mitte. Wo soll, wenn Raum kein Ende hat, dann irgendwo eine Mitte sein? Ich habe gedacht, naja, also Raum hat eigentlich kein Ende und keine Mitte, aber immer da, wo du glaubst, dass die Mitte ist, da ist sie halt. Wenn du denkst, Raumes Mitte ist direkt über mir oder so, dann ist das wegen mir die Raumsmitte. Ich habe eine Antwort gegeben. Aus dem Gefühl heraus, dass ich so etwas sagen müsste. Aber ich weiß nicht, ob es stimmt und die beiden Campos mögen mir verzeihen. Vielleicht sollten wir diese Fragen an beide stellen und möge so die Daseinsgrundlage, die Daseinsweise vor Vollendung als Grundlage erkannt werden.
이때랑 지금 코로나 통합해서 비나들이 상소 콘데지 접살들이 비나 코르스비라 통합해서 요리 비나 강리진은 선도 동아리 대식이 보이는 때 말을 받은 로 드리니 뭐도 다른 거를 거라 야야야 로또라마 보성들이 들이 양생 코로나 제시매배 들이 양제 다른 들이 양 사제 공방에 양 토야 요리 때라 토마미반에 대성들이 토만이 사제 예를 다다 이미 동적 경지 그러니까 그것을 라도 가니 토만이 것인데 라치한테 직발해서 그리 바르들이 다 레미 바사르들이 고반이다 나마 보배 이런 거 다 뒤들이 뒤에 거리 너게만 보용 다진 찔찔찔찔 바르 말이 또 보여 됐어 들이 다다라다 잘져서 양자들이 양자 타는데 선도 상태에서 전에 그래서 통사받아 되게 좋고요. 생활 다 통사받은 당하면 되네. 생활 유인데 직발에 초 유인으로 다 가는 로를 쳐도 꼬라 잡는 들이 간이 잡고 요랬더니 사주는 저거 요랬더니 양쳐디 야도는 나팔랑 빨은 로를 초코랑 꼬라 초코는 계속 매와는데 제가 철배잖아 주진다 나팔 배잖아 나쁘지 생활을 계속 매봤던 것도 생활 내로 쳐라더니 레마사들이 다 유체도들이 네 롱메 봐도 강수 롱메 봐 하고서 들이 저같이 보통서 세군대로 들선들 파도와도 총화메 봐 강그 죽은 롱메서 장들 들은 파파살이 좀 같은데 sem 롱메 봐 로버트는 뜨이는 이곳은 저거 요야지 대회들이 사제 탐정이 som성을 패거나 제모시 만나기면 이 송동의 거지 능랑 요 말에 사기에 사용할 때 답이라 코왕 소리 들은 배 사랑 대상하지 능의 망보요래 다지 이제는 독고를 레박차를 넣더니 저는 담는지 반하지 요래 통사 밤이 등살집에 세운대로 광러들이 제심해봐 통화하거나 대에서 고와서 전화들이 따뜻한 천랑동에 라마를 샤나 내lok성 쳐대는 이 동네들 로를 가진 바 마다 빨리 하고는 파욕도 요래 디핀도 전보요래 통답함이 등성점 생을 토마타마 요 말이지.
Ja, wenn die Rede ist von Bewusstheit.
So actually, within the mind there is no beginning and no end and no middle. So then, however, now samsara is created. So for samsaric sentient beings, there seems to be beginning, middle, and end. But then, beings also possess Buddha nature. It is just that now they they follow this road of ignorance and the 6 afflictive emotions. So going that road, then they wander thousands and thousands of years in samsara. In the meantime, the mind remains as it is, ever unchanging, and never actually being born or never actually dying. And even if one wanders in the lower realms, at one point one will be liberated again, and one can even attain enlightenment. And so it has been going on like this since beginningless times. It is that in the context of deity yoga practice, there's this one supplication that says, since the beginning, you, the deity, and me are inseparable. But then in the middle, I am engaged in negative action, and therefore I am wandering in samsara. And so that is like a time when we have become controlled by those maras, and we experience one suffering after the other. So in the middle, I have become obscured by ignorance, by thoughts of ignorance. But now, when I see the face of the deity, I prostrate to you. So now I've encountered you, an embodiment of love. And so actually the mental continuum of that deity, for example, and oneself is the same. It is just like the continuum of water that exists in this world. Water goes around in circles in this world, but in essence it remains unchanging. Sometimes we can use the water to drink it, sometimes we flush it down the toilet, but the water itself does not disappear. It doesn't die or isn't born. And that's also true for space. So here, in this verse, it is what it really says is you should realize that the mind is never born and it never dies. In order to interrupt this samsaric continuum, it is important not to accumulate karma. It is also said that mind is beyond coming and going. And when you understand that, you have really understood the meaning of Dzogchen. So those exalted beings, the Buddhas, have realized that all phenomena neither come nor go. The mind neither comes nor goes. So for the Buddhas, when they see us, it is just like a film, like a movie on TV. For example, if the Buddhas had to go to the lower realms, there would be no suffering for them. It would be more like a child's play or something like that. They would not have any fear at all. And that's unlike us. We actually experience overwhelming suffering, sometimes even if it just gets a little hot or cold. And so that is because of our very thick, very strong fixation to self and other, our very thick habitual imprints, karmic imprints in the mind. And these habitual imprints in the mind have made that water become muddy, like mud. So when you have even just a slight understanding that the mind does not die and it is never born, then all confused perception will become lighter and lighter. So then you recognize that no matter what arises, whatever problem and confusion arises, when you look at your mind, all of that doesn't actually exist. And the outer circumstance is only temporary. It is impermanent. So knowing that, you can let go of miserable thoughts within your mind.
사지 고박다도 죽은 남과지도 되다 자그요리 고함람다고 점막다고 동님이 버디와 치모디 생각하지 고하고 동님이 버디와 치모서 이거를 sem 걸 철내로 다다다 니감이 철내로 당상 못한 거에 봐서 열로 써못한 이런 말이지.
Then may all realize this great perfection, the true nature of the ground. And so when you read these words again and again, it will become very clear. Also, now having read these again and again, if you still have questions, you can also ask the Kempos here. So when you read this, look at your own mind and see, does my mind have a beginning or end? Actually, beginning and end are concepts that we make up ourselves. We create these concepts, but actually there is no real beginning and end. The state of Buddhahood, or the real nature of your mind, is the Dharmakaya, which is like the sky. And samsara is just like a dream or like an illusion. If you understand the nature of the mind, you will attain a state of great bliss that is free of all suffering. So here at this point, when you hear these words, it's important that you look within, you look at the nature of your mind and do not direct your mind to any outer objects.
로나디 로추지 고독에 몇다 드니 카드로 보면도 대 카리로 대중치 보여래 랑거 랑거 드니 제대로 지마디 네 로르슨 상소한테 용 통무스나 로랑은 드니 따더니 양답도 걸어도 양도 걸어 양도 걸어더니 눈이 고아 사보 샤거면이 저 그야자는 그냥 배그만 네 가통들로야 이런 배삼님 잡아래. 들어오는 추탐지 추주 보고 사지까지를 놓으래도 제발 요물에 됐다고 따와갖고 온데 생을 지어요. 라고 가리고 하는 데로 잡고요래. 애들이 드렁드렁 참적이지.
And so when you recite, when you read this prayer, actually, often what people do is that they read it, but that they just look at it really, but they don't actually say it. And then you actually do that with everything else too, with all the other books. And that's actually a really big mistake. You shouldn't do that. So what that means is you should actually say what you read. You should hear yourself say it. You shouldn't read it quietly. And actually, when you hear yourself say something, it's also easier to remember it, and eventually you memorize it. And that's later on really helpful when you can't see anymore, like myself, for example. Then you can just memorize everything. Another thing you can do is you can record yourself reading something and then listen to that again and again. Because every time you hear it, your understanding will get more and more profound. If you just read something once and then just do away with it, then that is not of much benefit. You won't learn a lot. So it's good to read things like that, like a prayer again and again. And by doing that, actually, it is no difference than really reading any of the other teachings of the Buddha, all of the words, like the Gangyo teachings of the Buddha. actually, especially these words here, when you read these words again and again, these words are directly related to the nature of the mind. So the more you read them, the more deep your understanding. So please don't just read it, but recite it so you can hear yourself. So now we stop the teachings here.
Thank you. Dankeschön.
Einen wunderschönen guten Morgen. Es gilt, glaube ich, noch, es ist kurz nach 12. Good morning. Es gibt ja wieder mal ein paar Durchsagen. Eine sehr wichtige ist, dass es eine Programmänderung am Freitag gibt. Und zwar um 15 Uhr ist die Yamantaka Dzogchen. Wer von euch die lange Sadhana besitzt, die bitte mitbringen. Und wenn ihr möchtet, auch etwas für den Dzog. So on Friday, 3 p.m., we have program change. There is a Yamantaka Dzogchen. And when you want to bring something, would like to bring something for the Dzog, so welcome. And heute werden die Fragen, also nochmal, die Plastikkiste mit den Fragen an die beiden Campos, die steht ja dann vorne an der Bar und die werden heute um 14 Uhr beantwortet. So again, the plastic boxes will be held now, so you can see this standing on the bar and you can put the questions, they will be answered at 2 p.m. Noch eine Durchsage. Wir bitten ausdrücklich diejenigen, die Deutsch verstehen, die Kopfhörer an die ausländischen Gäste zu überlassen. Und dann möchte ich nochmal hinweisen auf diesen Text, dieser Dzogchen-Text, der vorbereitet wurde. Er ist in 5 Sprachen. Tibetisch, Deutsch, Englisch, Französisch und Chinesisch. So the Dzogchen text were prepared for the event here. It's in 5 languages, Tibetan, English, German, French and Chinese. Und die letzte Durchsage, weil da gibt es auch neue Leute, die zu uns jetzt gekommen sind, bitte ausdrücklich keine Fotos, keine Ton- und keine Videoaufnahmen. So for the new people here, please do not make any recordings, no video, no audio, no photographs. Thank you very much. Enjoy your meal. Guten Appetit.